So hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here. It's always a pleasure going to Vienna. And today I'm here for like 6 hours, so I'm so happy. Anyhow, I'm going to talk a little bit about something you need to think about. It's purpose and sustainability. And since you have a lot of people in here that are developing and making the new society, I think we should talk about your responsibilities as well. So, first, a little about my background. As all of you in here probably, I used to be a developer. I'm still a developer, but not a good one, so I don't want to entitle me that name anymore. But I started with computers because I thought it was fun to play with games and to code games and all of that. And essentially, what I started doing is that I started gaming the computer instead. And that turned into being gaming society, essentially. So I started by copying things, and that has become basically everything I work with is copying. I copied things to program, so C compilers, stuff like that, assembly compilers, everything I needed to copy illegally from someone. But we didn't talk about that being illegally or bad or anything like that when I was a kid. So when I grew older, I started realizing this might not be something that's good, according to some people. So I joined a group called the Bureau for Piracy. And the Bureau for Piracy was a pro-piracy group. And the name comes from the Anti-Piracy Bureau. So we copied their name, remixed it, and made it better by being pro-piracy instead of against piracy. And that was kind of the way we did with everything. We started doing a lot of projects that was making fun of our opponents rather than talking about how good we are. We just made them look really bad, because then by comparison, we look good without bragging, which is a very Scandinavian thing. Pirate Bay was one of the projects that we started. And the reason why Pirate Bay became successful is not because it had good developers, it had crap developers. It looks like crap. But the one thing they had in common with all of the people involved was that we had a purpose. We had a determination that we wanted to change things. We wanted people to be able to share files without anyone being able to censor them. And that was why it was really, really big. And one of the things that happens when you get some sort of level of success when you're doing something which is in the grayscale, people are going to be pissed at you. So we started getting a lot of threatening letters, just like everyone else. So when you get a letter saying that you need to stop with what you're doing, you have two choices. One is stop with what you're doing, or keep going and make them even more pissed. And we decided the second one. So when we started getting these cease and desist declarations, as they're called, we always replied to them funnily, very childish, and made people realize that they're stupid. Because that's really good. So this is, my favorite one. We published all of them, including our replies. So we told people, example, DreamWorks, a big company in Hollywood, sent us letters saying, like, you should not allow people to download Shrek. And I tend to agree with that, because it's a crap movie. But I shouldn't censor people, right? So we told them, basically, you can shove this thing up your ass and go fuck yourself. We're in another country, as you usually do. You invade countries when you don't agree with them. But invade first this time instead. So they didn't know what to do. So we published all of them, including the replies. This is from a German company that you probably all use. It's called Linotype, and they own a lot of fonts. So all the typefaces that you use in your applications, whatever, they probably own the font for it, including Helvetica, which is the most used font in the world. And they sent us this lovely contract that we needed to sign, and they owned the trademark, and we needed to pay the money, and blah, blah, blah. So we, of course, do as we always do. We copied the whole letter and just reversed it, that they need to stop sending letters like this, and they need to pay us money. And typical Pirate Bay behavior, as we call it, we used all of the fonts they complained about. So it made us get a lot of attention. And we started realizing that this thing of getting attention might be really good, because we want people to know that we exist. And we didn't have any money for advertising or PR or anything like that. So we managed to do a lot of what you call viral things. So first of all, these people started saying, like, oh, but these guys from Pirate Bay, they're pirates. That's bad. And then they made movies about how cool pirates were, which is kind of insane. But we took the name pirate and made it cool. Like people wanted to be pirates, and their party starting the wrong type of party, but still it's a party called Pirate Party and all of that, because we took the name, just like the gay movement took the name gay and queer, all of these things, and we made it our own. So you couldn't really stamp us being, bad guys by being pirates. And we did a lot of weird things just to show off. So twice, we stole all of the IP space for North Korea. First time, we said that we are now hosted in North Korea because the United States is our enemy. North Korea is on our side, and of course they want us to be hosted in North Korea. So people were confused. Is this for real or is it not for real? It was the last of March, maybe 1st of April in some time zone. But people were not really sure about that. But some published and said they're now hosted in North Korea. And of course, it turned out to be a hoax. Second time, we stole all of the IP space and included fake trace routes. So when you looked at the network, it actually looked like we were hosted in North Korea. And we did even longer than that. We added latency on all of the network traffic, so it looked like it really passed the radio link. It took 1 week until people actually figured out how we did it. But for 1 week, we actually owned all of the IP space for North Korea, so it was probably our fault that no one could use internet there. Something like that. I'm not really sure. But this is what we always did. We needed to find a purpose, and the purpose was let everyone share things, let everyone have an open and free internet, and let's make sure that everyone is discussing this. And of course, you're going to have your opponents, and that's good. And they're going to come and say that you're bad guys or whatever. And one of my favorite things, just to show you how you can do some viral marketing if you want to be funny, is, I'm going to show you a clip from one of the documentaries about the Pirate Bay. You're going to see the head of Hollywood, the legal team of Hollywood in Europe. Hopefully the sound works.
Till att börja med så tror jag
Can you pull it up, the
att det
volume?
skulle finnas någon form av idé hos vanliga ungdomar om att upphovsrätt skulle vara fel eller så. Det tror jag är en myt, och den har liksom den här kopimistsekten varit väldigt duktiga på att marknadsföra.
So when someone don't have arguments anymore about what's wrong with you, they just label you stuff like terrorist, or in this case, a cult. And for me, that's kind of funny, because we had this idea. We're going to take what they call us, and we're going to make that cool or something good. So especially funny in this case, because this lawyer, she has 2 clients. Of course, Hollywood, that's her biggest client. The second biggest one is she is the European representative for the Church of Scientology. So when she calls you a cult, she should know a little bit about that, right? So what do? We didn't accidentally start a cult, or maybe?
This is wild. Some people seem to worship technology, but now it's being recognized as a religion. Yes, in Sweden, a church whose central tenet is the right to file share has been formally recognized by the Swedish government. It's called the Church of Copimism, I guess, Copimism or Copimism. Okay, and it claims that copy acting, sharing information through copying, is akin to a religious service.
Yeah. 50 euros to start a church in Sweden, by the way. It now has 36,000 members. And I actually have some issues with it. As most of the things I start, they end up being something different. The funny thing, which didn't really happen, is that we found a loophole in the Swedish legislation that we could become a church very simply, but also a legislation issue in the Data Retention Directive in the European Union, where all of your data is stored, except for one thing. When you talk to your priests, that's not allowed to be stored for any reason, because that's soulful communication, as it's called. So we decided, instead of having peer-to-peer, we're going to have priest-to-priest communication. So all P2P is religious, and you cannot be, well, if they take you for file sharing, illegally downloaded something, they also admit to violating your religious rights, which in Sweden is minimum 4 years of prison time. You decide what's important. The problem is, as always, you do a funny prank. It turns out to be very serious for some people. I remember I was in Belgrade a few years ago, and a guy comes up to me and he says, I want to get married in the Church of Copimism. I really believe in Copimism, and I want to get married. And here's my wife-to-be, and she's a believer. And we're talking. I'm also there with one of the priests of the church, who is actually Christian, and he doesn't believe in Copimism at all, but he's one of the top priests. And we're sitting there joking about it, how a ceremony would look, and I say, like, we need lasers and stuff like that. That's, typical thing from the copymists. And then after a while, I asked the guy, because he seems to be really, really serious, like, you do understand that this is a joke, right? And he replies to me, of course, I think you're just testing my faith. So, it makes you think that maybe you have a good idea in the beginning, but it turns out to be something else. So maybe I accidentally started a cult, but it was cheap and fun, at least. But this is one thing that you all should think about. It's like, when you develop things, what could they be used for that might not be what you're thinking about? So a typical problem is in Sweden. We have companies, we have lots of companies that do really cool things, but one of them made a system for quality of service, for making sure that people's VoIP phone calls worked really, really well. And that sounds like a good plan. But in order to do that, of course, you have to pass all the traffic through this box that they made and everything. And one day it got exported to other countries, and it turned out to be a big company. And it ended up in Libya, where Gaddafi was using the same technology to find people that are opponents to his politics. So a dictator was using the good technology that Swedish people created just to find and kill people. And do you have a responsibility if they do that? Well, I wouldn't say you have a responsibility, but you have a responsibility to actually think, what could my stuff be used for? The company I'm working for, what are they actually going to end up creating? Because we have a lot of power as developers and entrepreneurs starting things. We are changing the world by doing this, so we need to take responsibility for it. And one typical thing is that everyone in here is probably a little bit concerned about their privacy. Well, maybe there's not a big issue right here, but most of your data is not controlled by you. It's controlled by Facebook and Twitter and Amazon and Google and all of these guys. You all know this. It's super boring. But the problem is that you're all helping, because all of you are probably using Facebook Connect and all of these apps and all of the APIs just to simplify your everyday life. So you are actually responsible for people collecting data. And what do you do about that? Well, if someone starts a campaign against all of that, you probably click the like button on Facebook to say you agree, which is kind of weird. So we have this situation where we're kind of living in some sort of matrix. We know that we have a problem. We could take the pill of being outside, but we decided to know about the problem but stay in the matrix, which is like the least good solution whatsoever. And for us as activists, whatever you want to call it, I call myself an artist. Maybe I should be an activist, or maybe I should be a prankster, or maybe I should just be unemployed. I don't know. But I think it's important that we realize that we are in a really, really important place in time right now, where we have a lot of responsibility that we don't take care of. So I'm always the bad guy. I'm always the guy complaining, and I'm always the negative guy. And as every negative guy, I'm always going to say I'm the realist, because it sounds less boring than being negative. But we have this thing, ACTA. You remember ACTA? It was really big in all of Europe, and we're super proud that we stopped it. Great, we put in a lot of effort, and then everyone is, talking about, we did really, really good activism. We made the politicians say no to this. But what happened? It just delayed it. So we're still at the same place. We still have ACTA, but it's now called TPP or TTIP, depending on which country you're in. And it's still going to pass through everything because we got bored by the fight. And this is the problem we have. We have a lot of people to thank for knowing things in the world, like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, all of these guys. But nothing they did, nothing of the things that they leaked or revealed or anything, actually changed anything in the long run, which is a problem we're having right now. And it's getting even worse. It's getting to the place where you're going to have a guy like this. It's almost the same guy. We're going to have guys like these controlling everything in the world. They're going to take over, and we're going to help them. And we're going to, throw away all of the things that people worked for in a lot of time. So freedom of information, liberty, democracy, transparency, all of these things are things that we on the internet, that create the internet infrastructure, are responsible for in the future. And then again, dramatically, it's really easy to have guys like Snowden, who looks like a super nice guy. It's really easy to like him, and it's really easy to dislike people like this. But they end up winning in the end anyhow. So we don't have these Hollywood happy endings that we helped with. And I take my full blame for helping people sharing Hollywood movies, which was probably a really bad idea, because we still believe in these happy endings. I'm going to show you a really depressive thing before I go on to something more happy. Do you remember 1984, this book? Here's a small clip of George Orwell talking about the book.
But he left one final warning.
1984 is, I believe, a quite terrifying masterpiece. So terrifying, in fact, I don't think I should like to read another like it.
I am not absolutely dissatisfied with it. I think it is a good idea, but the execution would have been better if I had not been under the influence of TB when I wrote it.
You once claimed that you have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
Okay, he's a really scary guy. He was really wrong about sex and orgasm being abolished. I think internet made sure that everyone has more orgasms than ever before. Maybe more in the very monogamous way, but at least some things are good. The loyalty to the party might be the loyalty to Facebook or Google. But it's really interesting to see that a guy that far back knew that where we were heading. I think that we need to understand that we're part of this problem, and we are sort of also the elite. So I know that in this country, Pirate Bay is not, you can't access Pirate Bay legally. Or, well, legally probably, but easily. Your internet providers are, for some reason, censoring Pirate Bay. And for us as technologists, it's really fucking easy to bypass all of that. And honestly, none of the traffic is actually vanished from Pirate Bay. It's always growing in every country all over the world. So it doesn't really work. But there is a problem, because we have the educated class that understand how to circumvent blocking and censorship like this, and you have the people, the general mass, who don't understand that. So you are kind of the 1% in here when you know how to deal with the internet and technology. And that's really important, because you have a responsibility of telling everyone else how to deal with this, and also why it's wrong, why censorship is a bad idea, and why this will be a slippery slope to something else. Even though it's easy for you to bypass and you forget it in your mind, there's like 100 people that don't bypass it as easily as you. Because you kind of cement the blocking when you accept it to begin with. And we all know what's going to happen in the future. You're going to have lots of cool new technologies, and they're going to start out being like the 3D printer. It's going to be something which is a funny thing right now. You can make small gadgets. It takes forever. We had a party at Flattr once, and we made we had a cake, and we didn't have enough spoons. So I downloaded a spoon, because I really wanted to print a spoon on my 3D printer, an illegal copy of a spoon. It took 8 hours to get the copy done in the right way. But in the future, it will be totally different. So, of course, everyone who's against this, they start saying, like, oh, we're going to have guns. People are going to download guns, and they're going to print knives, which you could buy in any hardware store. So we're having this wrong conversation. Rather, what we're going to do in the future is we're going to have something like food being created and downloaded. You're going to download food or shoes or whatever you want in your life. You're going to be able to download. And the things we should talk about is how do we reuse the plastic in our home? How do we make sure that everyone has access to this? Because we all think Spotify is a good solution, centralized ownership of music. But do you want Foodify, someone deciding what you can and can't eat? It sounds weird, but it's probably going to happen, be something like that. So rather we discuss this now, what we want with technology, and not in the future. And we have this weird situation right now where everyone is becoming, they want to be these unicorns, a big company worth $1 billion. So you have all of these companies that you all know about that's becoming insanely big. But one of the biggest things is that before you had physical products and we went over to virtual products. You bought something that was like a newspaper in a PDF form or whatever. But the big companies today, they have virtually no product whatsoever. The only thing they do is that they sell something else that belongs to someone else, and they become the infrastructure for everything. And the problem with this is that when you have a few companies controlling everything, you're also going to be in deep shit. So if you go back just a few years, 10 years, where when you talk about self-driving cars, for instance, you had this thing that self-driving cars would never be a possibility. Every top researcher, scientist said, it's not going to happen. We're not going to have a possibility of doing that because it needs some sort of human AI to understand this is a child and you should not hit it and so on and all of these things. You know, a few years later, Google had the most successful car in history ever. And now everyone is releasing self-driving cars and it's going to be really, really important. But remember that blocking that you did in this country with Pirate Bay, saying like Pirate Bay domain name is blocked, you can't go there. What if you have a self-driving car, 6 years from now, all cars might be self-driving, and someone decides that this or this square is not legal to go to anymore, so they just take that out of the GPS system. It's not in the address book anymore, just as Pirate Bay is not in your address book. And you wouldn't know about it because you never go there, because it's just not there. That is the same thing right now, because internet is not a separate part of society. It is an extension of society. It's the infrastructure of the current society. And we all think that we're like living in this peak time, but we have, as everyone's understanding, the accelerating of the internet and technology. So in 2035, it's expected that we make as much technology every month as we've done ever in human history before. Every month that will double. It's going to be insane growth. And it's not that far ahead, and we're very sure of this going to happen. So what are we talking about? Are we talking about how to make sure that we all have jobs, what we're supposed to live on, how to share the wealth that we're doing? We're not really talking about that. We're still talking about copyright and APIs, but maybe we should talk about citizen salaries. Is that a good idea? Is that not a good idea? And these are really important things because we need to talk about human rights because we're very focused on digital rights, but human rights is something we're losing. Personally, I'm trying to deal with this in different ways. So you all know Pirate Bay. I'm not going to even do this head count, how many, because you all used it. And if you're not, if you say not, you're lying. I saw 60% of you using the porn. Anyhow, Flattr is my way of thinking about value in a different term. And that is really important, that we have people that go outside and not just like look at the current regime and current thoughts. You need to provoke people and need to think differently about things. So Flattr is a system it's a micropayment system where you put in a certain amount of money each month. And then you go around the internet and you use a button that looks like the like button, and you click it. At the end of the month, we divide your money by as many buttons you click. It's a very simple one-time micropayment. You just click and you paid someone something. And the value is what it gives to you, not the value of actual money. But this is a way of looking at value differently, because we all have different amount of money, and we need to encourage people to spend money. It's not free to create things, but the problem was never that people weren't willing to pay. It was how to find ways to pay. I don't want to preach, and I don't want to tell people that we're hiring, but we are hiring, and it's a really good system. And this is apparently a hiring conference more than a developer conference. So, yeah. But this is the thing. We're remaking Flattr into a new version. We're going to talk about it in the future, but it's going to be very, very different, and I'm really happy what's going on. But I don't want to preach too much. Other things I'm doing to talk about this is that I'm working as an artist to show absurdity of current society. A few months ago, I released one of my first big solo artworks. I've done a lot of things before in groups, but I released something I call the copy machine. I don't know if you heard about this. It's a Raspberry Pi. It's with an LCD display. And the idea with the copy machine was that I wanted to show the absurdity of copyright and the figures, because the record industry says that every copied song, wherever and however you copy it, is $1.25 lost in revenue for a music company. So what the copy machine does, it takes one song, it has one song on the SD card memory, and it makes a copy of that to dev null. So, you have this thing called washing, where you buy two bottles of champagne and you pour one out to show how rich you are. This machine does that with music. This morning, it was like $15 billion that it had stolen from the record industry, according to their own math, for one song. It's the most illegally copied song ever in history. It's this song called Crazy by Gnarls Barkley. And he should, by now, be the poorest person in human history ever, looking at their own statistics. And the idea with the copy machine, and it got a lot of attention all over the world. It's on Vice magazine, all of these websites, it was among the most read news articles ever, because it is so simple, and it's very, very easy for people to understand the absurdity of things. I'm also working on another project that I'm calling the Tribunal. And the idea of the Tribunal is to make people more interested in the problems we have with globalization and the internet being a new platform in a kind of a new country. Because you have you don't have the obligations as a company or as a website anymore. Previously, if you did something illegal in a company, you would go to jail or you would be fined, whatever. But right now, companies all over the world, as we can see with the Panama Papers, they can just put money wherever they want, and they can put responsibilities where they want to have them, if they want to have. You can pick and choose because of globalization. I'm not saying everything is bad with globalization, but I'm saying that we have issues with all of the new things coming up. We need to also discuss them. So the Tribunal is just an open source code base you can download, and it contains also a system, basically a document on how to perform a tribunal. And the idea is that you can have your own tribunal that's based on ethics and morals. So we did a tribunal I was in Den Haag at an art festival, and we did a tribunal about Edward Snowden. Was he legally responsible? We don't care. Ethically, he was totally free. So we made him a piece of paper after holding a tribunal saying that he is a free person, he can travel wherever in the world, and he cannot be held responsible for releasing the documents. And the idea is to make sure that we talk about the visible problems that we have. So if I want to sue Facebook, I can't, because I have to sue them in California, and I don't have any rights, and I don't have any lawyers. I don't have any rights because I'm not a citizen of the country. So the tribunal don't care. And this is because we need to talk about all of those things as well. Because at stake here is democracy. And a really important thing with democracy is that no one cares about it anymore, because we all are so used to having it. So people have been fighting for democracy and their rights and everything for hundreds of years and spent their, offered their lives for it. But now we're taking it so much for granted that people don't care anymore. Last year, it was the biggest election in Danish history, basically because of the refugee crisis. And everyone was saying it's the most important election we've ever had in Denmark. And I took this screenshot from the Danish public service TV, showing the currently most seen TV shows on Danish TV, 1 hour before the actual election ended. And the first place is some sort of girl comedy show. It must be really good. Third place is the Evening of Democracy. But in second place was the Swedish royal monarch wedding. So monarchy is more interesting to Danish people in another country than democracy is. And that is very, very telling where we're heading with this. I had this issue a few years back. Some of you might know that, Pirate Bay gave some issues legally to people here and there. And when you're wanted by Interpol, you need to find a way to actually kind of surpass that. I don't know if you've had that problem yet. Maybe you're going to have it in the future. I decided when I ended up on the Interpol wanted list, which was one of my greatest achievements in life ever. As an artist, it's really good to have on your CV. I decided, I need to find a funny way to eradicate the problems. I need to be able to travel. I need to be able to go wherever I wanted. I want to be able to put that in the face of someone I hate. So how do you do that? Well, you need to get diplomatic immunity, which was, typical thing you think. So I decided to run for office in Finland in 2014 in the European Union Parliament election. I'm a Finnish citizen. But I don't really like politics. That's, as I said, it's the wrong type of party for me. So I decided to do a little bit differently. So I decided to just make my campaign about basically not having politics at all. So I didn't want to talk shit about my opponents. I didn't want to talk about how good I am and I'm going to promise to do this and this. So I'm going to show you my final thing. I'm going to show you why I should not be elected, but also The most viewed ever political campaign in the European Union history. I didn't get enough votes, and the day after election ended, I actually got caught by the Swedish police 2.5 years after being wanted by Interpol. Shitty work by them. But here you go. I'm going to be very embarrassed after this, but I'm so sorry. Sorry. So really important quality. And for the PR people out there, if you think this is a bad idea, I got 8 pages in the biggest newspaper in Finland the day on the election in the morning. I had 8 pages to myself to talk about my policies, just because they thought I was totally fucked up. So it's a really good way of don't talk about what you actually want to talk about. So I think I went way over time. I'm sorry. Yes, I also have questions. How did the legal actions, it's on the, legal actions against TPB, I don't know what that is, affect your everyday life? Well, airport security, I have so many stories about that. Last time they got airport security came up to me, I just gave them my bag and said, please carry that for me, sir. You need to be really annoying to people that want to annoy you. I've been to prison for 6 months. That was one thing. I have 10 million euros in debt in Sweden. Not a problem. I don't live in Sweden, so it's not a problem. But everyday life, well, not really. That's also the shitty thing, because I really believe that if you get convicted of something, there should be consequences. Well, I did go to jail. That was kind of shitty. I also pissed a lot of people off in jail. But the people working there, not the people in jail. That would be terrible. I made a really good friend who's a cocaine smuggler. Not a good one, granted. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been friends with him. But it's really interesting seeing other things in life. So it was a good experience, in one way, and shitty in another way. It's the second time I have to fart a man in his face. Different story. Also, the first one is a different story. Undo Pirate Bay, no. Only thing, everyone asks me this all the time, like, would you do something different about Pirate Bay? And I say, every time I say the same thing. We were 3 people in the Pirate Bay. It was, 1 alcoholic, 1 drug addict, and then 1 more. I'm not going to say who's who. But one guy, he's a cryptographer, and he's one of the best ones in the world. He's the one who did not have his hard drive encrypted, where all of the evidence against Pirate Bay was found. So I would force him to actually encrypt his hard drive. But he got convicted. So, to make another funny story, he was living in Cambodia after the Pirate Bay, and when we got convicted, he wanted to see if we actually ended up on the Interpol Most Wanted list. So he hacked into Interpol, and from his home IP, because he didn't think they could get him, which they couldn't. But he also searched first for his name, then my name, then Julian Assange. And it was all logged, but it was not a good way if you don't want to get caught. But he's a cool guy. Yes, so join the church. Well, you could start your own fork. It's really a good thing to do. A lot of people did. We have 30-ish forks of it. But you can also join. There's a Copimist society in most countries. I think you have one in Austria. I'm scared of the people involved in the church, so I wouldn't go near them anymore. And the next question is actually the most interesting one. Technological solution for this whole thing. Well, no. There is no technological solutions to solve the problems arising with technology. It's a political solution, and to be realist, if we want to control our own private lives, if we want to have control of our own internet and our own society in the end, we need politicians that go and say, this is what we want. And you need to make sure that you have human rights, digital rights, and you own your own data. It has to be legal, has to be yours by law, and not something you do a deal with Facebook and then you get a picture with Mark Zuckerberg and you're happy to smile next to a really famous guy. That's the problem we have. We don't have any good politicians that would actually be hardcore enough to solve the issues. So I don't think we have any tech solution or political solution today. Can you still travel to the US? Yes, to the US, but not from. I think we need to end. So thank you very much for having me over.
Thank you very, very much.